two agencies of the government issued reports on changing income and wealth here in the United States. Typically in 1 month, we don't even have one report. We had two. One of them was produced by the Congressional Budget Office, CBO, an interesting body that is quite well reputed in the United States. It's bipartisan. It includes both Republican and Democratic staffers. And the documents that they issue and the statistics they issue are usually credited by folks pretty much across the spectrum because of their long history of being pretty careful with their statistics, something which many other parts of the United States government are not. And they did a report issued a couple weeks ago called, and I have a copy here if any of you want to see it later, Trends in the Distribution of Household Income between 1979 and 2007. So this is a really authoritative report on how income distribution in the United States has changed pretty much over the last 30 years, the last generation of the American history. And it is about as definitive a summary report on this as you're going to want to get. And if any of you are doing research or interested in that, this is a document to get. Just go to cbo.gov and you can find it on the internet. Here's what it shows. And before I say it, I don't mind editorializing. You probably have noticed I often don't mind editorializing. About this. They decided to organize their statistics in an interesting way, to juxtapose not just the usual breakdown, which economists do call quintiles. They divide the American income recipients into 4 groups: the poorest fifth, the 3 middle fifths, and the richest fifth. They did that, but that really wasn't the main focus. For some reason that nobody could understand, they organized the statistic by looking at what happened to the top 1% and what happened to the 99 other percent. I have no idea why they did that. Certainly couldn't have anything to do with larger political movements in the United States, because a group of professional economists would not allow themselves to be swayed by grubby people in a neighborhood, you know, peeing in the street. They wouldn't do that. But for some reason, they decided to do it. And here's what they found. Between 1979 and 2007, the share of the total income received by the top 1% went up. And the share of income received by the 99 remaining went down, which, if you think about it, is a necessary implication. What's really interesting is that the top 1% doubled their share of income, roughly from 10% to 20% of the total income earned in the United States. That's impressive. And all the other people shared the reduction of the 10% that all the other people had to. And what was particularly interesting is that the people at the bottom, they didn't suffer much, they didn't lose much, because they don't get hardly anything anyway. So the people at the bottom didn't lose. And if you come and look at the bar graphs, the big reductions are in the middle. The middle 3 quintiles, the 60% of the people that are not the poorest 20% and not the richest 20%, that's where the drop in their share of income was the strongest. And when you think about American politics, that tells you something. It tells you where the bite came, from whom the people at the top took the extra, the doubling for themselves. The second thing in this report that's really interesting, if you have the time to look at it, is they did something that most reports don't do. After looking at the distribution of income and how much more unequal our distribution of income has come in the last 20 years, this is historically quite a move for that period of time. You don't normally see that in American history, that big a change in that short a historical period. They did an interesting thing. They said, would it look differently if we added in not just the income people earned from their work and their money from stocks and bonds, but we added in government programs. How does the government affect it? Because the government taxes people differentially, and it makes what are called transfer payments. The government gives people income separately from what they earn. So it factored all of that in. to see whether the claim that the government redistributes income and that it does so from rich to poor is the case. Their research discovered it is not the case. The inequality is actually slightly worse when you factor in taxes and transfer payments than if you don't. So it's an extraordinary document, not only about growing inequality, but in the fact, the inference you draw, that the rich not only got, the top 1%, double the amount of money into their hands that they used to, but they were smart enough to use it to make sure that the government did not redistribute it away from them as they were increasing their share. They neutralized any effect the government might have had on that.